Government. Canada. The Constitution and Charter of Rights and Freedoms doesn't apply to Canadians. Remember the 4 elements of a valid legal contract? Number 1, full disclosure. Number 2, equal consideration. Number 3, lawful terms and conditions. And number 4, signatures of all parties. Is your signature on it? No, you're not a party to it. Since Canada in capital is a corporation, the charter is precisely that, a charter for a LLC, limited liability corporation, not a contract involving you, because corporations can't contract. Only living souls can contract. The Constitution is a body of law written by the state in order to control the government. The Canadian government, the CAG, is controlled by a belligerent foreign fictional corporation called the Anglican Church, and known as the British Crown. Their constitution does not apply to the people of the landmass known as Canada. It applies just as every other code, rule, regulations, ordinance, and statute applies only to the Crown's employees, namely the federal and provincial governments and all their employees, and to anyone who chooses to volunteer. See application of charter in Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And what do you say with COVID-19? That the politicians and the senior civil servants are being tested first, the NHS staff being tested. These are the employees, as it were. Now let's talk about this charter. The charter applies A, to the Parliament and Government of Canada in respect to all matters within the authority of Parliament, including all matters relating to the Yukon Territory and Northwest Territories, and B, to the legislature and government of each province in respect of all matters within the authority of the legislature of each province. As none of us signed this contract, it doesn't apply to us. Our charter rights are violated with impunity by the privately owned Anglican Church legal systems franchise known as the BAR, the association called the BAR, via the Vatican and British Crown. There is a difference between the Canadian government and the US government. The CAG and the USG are 2 different things. The feds in Canada not only call themselves civil servants, but also believe maybe they truly are the civil servants of the people, and hence it is easier for them to understand that the Canadian people are truly sovereign. Maybe. Even though Americans are more inherently sovereign than Canadians, the feds in the US are now nowhere near as likely to admit it. Let's talk about the American government. America. There were only 4 purposes of government. Number 1, to provide a military to protect the American republics. Number 2, to monitor commerce, trade among the republics. Number 3, to maintain the overall welfare for all, not just certain groups or individuals. Number 4, to govern internationally commerce of the Union. The Bill of Rights dictates the limitations of government. The people of the United States of America never had constitutional rights. They had a government with limitations in order to preserve their natural rights. Alas, no more. Socialism. What is socialism? Basically, this means government controls publicly owned utilities, railroads, posts, communications, etc. And what is fascism? Basically, fascism is about the people own, but the government controls everything. Communism? Government owns and controls all productivity. Says the name of the deed for your house is a government-created name in capital name. The government owns your house. You'll notice that this setup falls into the last definition, communism. The sole objective of the global elite is to create an economic slave force. And FDR says an economic system which is owned by the workers and controlled by the states, economic growth and planning controlled by a central authority, corporations and their stock regulated by the government, private Federal Reserve Board controlling interest rates and income tax, and political control by an authoritative party. Now this is an FDR statement. Roosevelt. They must distract the people with inane subjects like sports, politics, thinking that there is any difference among party leaders via TV, so that they don't notice what's really going on. The first plank of the Communist Manifesto is abolition of private property. The agenda of the global elite is to steal land, control families, education, religion, implement a central private bank, promote immoral behaviour, and eliminate countries and nationalities. Done. Now, the rule, this is from the Supreme Court Justice Felix Frankfurter in 1952. He says this: the real rulers in Washington are invincible and exercise power from behind the scenes. We know about the America's invisible government. And General Douglas MacArthur states, I am concerned for the security of our great nation, not so much because of any threat from without, but because of the insidious forces working from within. Now we talk about communism right now. The planks of communism. Now let's talk about the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto. Number 1, abolition of private property. Number 2, heavy progressive income tax. Number 3, abolition of all rights to inheritance. Number 4, confiscation of property of all immigrants and rebels. Number 5, a central bank. Number 6, government control of communications and transportation. Number 7, government ownership of factories and agriculture. Number 8, government control of labor. Number 9, corporate farms. Regional planning. Number 10, free education for all children in government-controlled schools. We have been communized in that production in relation to consumption must be ruthlessly regulated. or the fraud upon the public perpetrated by bank credit will be reviewed